Hello and welcome to See Hope Podcast. We are looking for hope in every situation, and tonight we are going to tell you a story, Rouba's story, who comes from a tragic recent hit in her life, and that we are going to show you the hope that came out of that situation. Before we get started, though, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Every high five will give me a high five this time. Every like will give me a high five this time because John is not with us today. So if you, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Every time you share the channel as well on your social medias or anything like that, that helps us dramatically and allows this story to go out further. And if you think it's a worthy story, please do that for us because we can't do this alone. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest to you. So this is Rouba.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. It's great to have you, Rouba. Do you want to give us a little snapshot of who you are and how you came to be here?
Yeah, sure. So, where to start? I'm not actually. I wasn't born in Australia. I was born in Lebanon, and I came out here when I was 12 after living in Lebanon and then Europe. I was actually living in 5 countries by the age of 12. And then, I know, right? And then just recently I got back from living in the US. So that makes it 6 countries all up. I was living there for 7 years and I've been back now for 7 months.
How's the transition coming back?
It's been great, actually. I did not realize how much I missed Australia and the Central Coast in particular.
Yeah. It's a pretty great country.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We need to fight for it at the moment, but it is a great country.
And the Central Coast especially, it's just so beautiful and it has everything you could ever possibly need. And it's just the people are amazing, down to earth. And I really learned to appreciate something that I think I took for granted for a long time.
I didn't grow up on the Central Coast, but I can vouch for it. It is definitely paradise up here.
Yeah,
it is. Some people would say God's country, and it is a great place to live. Yeah, but tell us about your recent season. So your US trip.
Well, I think probably the 7 years that I was in the US, especially probably the last, let's say, 4 years there, was really like trial by fire to the absolute. Like it pushed me to my limits. But my actual journey of suffering, I guess I would call it, started as far back as 2007 in a way, even though it sort of was a very gradual build to where I ended up, because I found out that I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's a form of cancer back then.
Yeah.
And
so for people who don't know, what part of the body does that affect?
Well, it's in the lymphatic system, and so it can come up anywhere. And so it's not like other forms where you can just kind of cut it out. So even though tumors were presenting in certain places, like they weren't able to cut them out. And so, but originally when it started, it was so low grade that they said, look, there's nothing we're going to do. We'll just do what's called watch and wait. And so for 6 years, I sort of was living underneath this cloud, but nothing was really eventuating. And then in 2013, an ultrasound showed that a tumor had formed.
Yeah.
And they all wanted me to get chemo straight away. And I was very resistant because I'd done a lot of research and seen how toxic chemo is to the body. And I've always been a bit of a health freak. So I actually tried to fight it naturally for 3 years. And then in 2016, I ended up having to get chemo, which was coincidentally only a couple of months after I got married. And so maybe not so coincidentally for later on in the story, there was definitely some kind of connection there. But anyway, so then I went through hardcore chemotherapy, like a really hard type called R-CHOP, which was very strong and made me lose all my hair, and I got very, very sick. And threw me into early menopause and all kinds of things. That was really hard.
Your current hair though that's all natural, right?
All
It's all
mine,
because
all
it's
come back.
looking great.
Well,
You're
it
doing
yes,
well there.
thank you. Well, I actually did come back after 3 years. It got back to, because I've always had long, thick hair, so it took 3 years to get back to what I was used to. But then not long after that, even though I was thrown into remission, I found out back in March of 2020 that the cancer had returned.
Yeah.
And so from 2020 through to 2022, 2 years of fighting it with different forms of treatment, natural. I went to Mexico, went to Lebanon, and then I ended up at the Moffitt Cancer Center, where I did the treatment that actually put me into remission with the likelihood of a cure, which is awesome. And I've been 3 years in remission now, and the longer I'm in remission, the more likely that it's going to give me a complete cure. So, and I actually believe it. I am cured.
Yeah.
But the journey of that alongside other forms of suffering was just so intense, especially being in the US the second time round, far away from my support networks.
Far away from family.
And it was also during COVID, and it was also during.
Which state were you in?
I was in Florida. So the one good thing about being in Florida is that the mandates weren't so strict, but we still, like at uni, we still had to wear masks. And I was also, that's the other thing I was going through. I went back to uni as a mature age student and got my master's in fine arts in directing, in stage directing. Having been a drama teacher here for many years, I wanted to like upscale over there so that I could, because there's so many great opportunities for directors over in the US, and I love directing. And so, but I was grad school, they call it over there, was so intense. Like they were really, the scrutiny I was under, the expectations were so high, because this university, I was at Florida State University, they actually feed a lot of undergrad students, performers, into Broadway. And so the director, they only take 2 directing students every 2 years. And so just to get in was a huge privilege. But then once you're in, it's not easy. They're really on you. And also being a Christian in that environment was difficult. There was a real cancel culture around that, especially during that time in the world.
with that kind of cancel culture around the Christianity, was that mostly in the uni, or was that mostly like Florida itself?
No, actually, there was not Florida. It was more like
mostly just in that.
There's the university and then the School of Theatre, which is, that the world of the arts is kind of a little bit antagonistic towards Christianity, which I think is very unfortunate. And I think we are very misunderstood. I think there's this stigma attached to Christianity in those environments that says that, we're hateful people. And I certainly wanted to present in such a way that I showed how loving and accepting I was of everybody, because in the end we all fall short and need a savior, no matter whether we've got the sin of pride or the sin of pedophilia. Like, it doesn't, we all fall short. So we all need God.
Awesome. And so over in the US, you mentioned that you were married as well. So is that the reason why you moved to the US?
Yeah. So I think the story of tragedy in my life is kind of, there's like two main streams.
There's 2 highways there, right next to each other, 2 lanes.
There's the cancer, and then there's the toxic relationship that I married into that I didn't know until 5.5 years later, when it all exploded. And I was living, it was kind of like this gradual, they say if you put, is it a frog in hot water because of its cold-bloodedness? I don't know. I'm probably mixing my metaphors.
No, I think that's the right metaphor. It's when you put a frog in hot water, and it's I don't know exactly. Yeah, I know the one. I know.
Or maybe it's not hot water. You put it in
cold water, and then it slowly boils.
And it doesn't know that it's boiling to death. It was kind of, I was in a bit like,
lobsters are similar.
Maybe it's the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in that situation where, like, was in this underneath so much deception and living in so much internal denial that I wasn't even aware I was living in denial, obviously, that it just was this massively shocking thing when everything kind of got exposed. And it was happening at the same time as I was fighting cancer during COVID, grad school, isolated in the US. So it was so much going on all at once. So that's why I guess it's comparable to the I feel like my story is comparable in some ways to the story of Job.
Yeah. Job. That's I think a lot of people can can relate to Job.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Job is a story in the Bible that came out of kind of left field. It kind of doesn't have, we don't know its author. But the significance in it is that it's a story that promotes that shows you a side of people and a side of God that doesn't normally get seen. Job is this person who's known to God as righteous, as blameless, and he's actually won't curse God's name, kind of thing. And so the devil kind of, who's also called the accuser in the story, says to God, you've put a hedge around this man, and he will never curse you because you've made his life so good. And so Job, God goes, well, look, you can have at him. And so God willingly lets Job suffer at the hands of the devil, which pretty much takes his whole world away. He takes his wealth, he takes his family, except for his wife. We could make a couple of jokes there about the devil know what he's doing. But there's the
she wasn't always supportive.
No, she wasn't always supportive. And so Job went through this trial of suffering, and throughout the whole thing, he had 3 friends and his wife who just kept saying, like, you need to come to God and repent because you've done something wrong. And that's one of the stories in Job, that he actually didn't do anything wrong, and he was tested, and God actually comes to him because he actually gets a dialogue with God later, and he goes, he never curses God's name, and he actually gets enriched by God in the end.
Double for his trouble.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he goes to God, and he's like, why did this happen? And he's like, you cannot question me. I pretty much, I am God. I know everything from the big picture down to the smallest little detail. You can't kind of judge that because you don't know what's happening. And it's kind of just showing us as people how small we are, and how we need to be kind of given over to God's wisdom, and that the things that we may not see, like we may not see the forest through the trees. And I think it's a great story, and it's a amazing dialogue between Job and his friends, and then Job and God, and it's absolutely great read. One of the best Bibles, one of the best books in the Bible to start with if you're in that season. And I think a lot of people do go through that season, and I think suffering isn't a bad thing. It sucks that we go through it, and it kind of helps us to grow ourselves as well. And we always grow through suffering.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
You're saying this is your Job season. So
yeah, so I feel like I'm reticent to say this because there's been a few times when I've said this along the way and then I get another hit of something. But I do feel like I'm out of it. I feel like since I've been back in Australia, the last 7 months have been a gradual restoration of so many things, especially my health, and not just my physical health, but my emotional, mental health, my peace, and finally out of survival mode. I think for pretty much the last 4 years of my time in the US, I was constantly in survival mode, living off caffeine drinks and just trying to just keep going, but kind of destroying my health even more in a way because I wasn't resting properly, eating properly, exercising, doing all the things that that you're supposed to do in a normal balanced life.
Kind of like you're doing the classic university diet at
Oh
a
yeah.
much later date.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was at uni.
Yeah.
And over there, like you, they did. I mean, I was directing shows at night, and I was teaching classes because I had an assistantship, like a scholarship to be
Mm.
there, and I was taking classes, and so though all three of those things, it was just they're all full time jobs, and so you're doing them all at once.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated, I took a job in East Texas as a theater professor at a Baptist university, a full time theatre professor, and there was only like two of us in the full time professors in the department. And we were expected to mount four full scale productions, and I had to direct two of them and supervise the others. So I was again in an even more workaholic place and with very toxic leadership, even though it was a Baptist university, where I was exploited, discriminated against, overworked, underappreciated, undervalued, and just like it was just really, really upsetting
Mm.
because of I was expecting to go into a Christian community where I'd be supported, looked out for, but the opposite was happening. So that was really also something that really challenged my paradigms and my expectations on God.
Yeah. It doesn't help those Christian stigmas that we're trying to lose, does
No,
it?
it doesn't. But I think I do feel like that was also another sort of chapter in my Job story
Mm.
because everything that I had in the past kind of run to for safety and security and help. Like I was in Christian community here on the coast for nearly 20 years at two different Christian schools as a drama teacher. And I really received a lot of support, security, community in those places. And I guess God was still trying to teach me that really He's the only one
Mm.
that I can lean on
Yeah.
for everything. And the very things you think that are going to be there for you sometimes can be your absolute biggest enemy. I mean, I've
Yeah.
experienced that with friendships as well,
Mm.
experienced that with my ex-husband, family members, all kinds. So in the end, though, what doesn't make you bitter makes you better. And I think that's
That's a
the
good one.
choice we always have to like make when we have suffering is do we
Mm.
let this make us bitter and hate God and angry, and or do we let it drive us deeper into the places that He wants us to go to find how He can be our full source in everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where did I guess your journey in terms of, so you've got this suffering through your cancer, and then you've moved to the US and you've done this, you're slogging it out. And so when do you meet your
Yeah.
ex-husband?
So I'll
And
tell you the story of how I met his name is Mark. Hopefully it's not was. I don't know if he's still alive or not. I haven't been in touch with him for a long time. But anyway, so I met him on a Christian dating site back in 2015. So nearly 10 years ago now, because it was May of 2015 that we started communicating on a Christian dating site. And he was in the US and I was here. And what drew me to him was the fact that he said that he had started a not for profit company to help victims in human trafficking,
mm,
especially women who uh, come out of shelters and they've got no clothes. And he's really into fashion, so he started something called Fashion Hope to help source really good quality secondhand clothes for them, so that when they came out, they had some dignity. And I had written a play on human trafficking
mm,
to raise awareness on it and also raise some money for the A21 campaign, which had been a huge success. We raised, I think, $10,000 for them and a lot of awareness. And so that was something I've always been passionate about. And that was like, wow, he's on the same page. And
yeah.
so we started talking, and then not long after he wanted to get on the phone. And the very first thing he said to me, he's like, oh, I'm really old fashioned and I don't believe in having sex before you're married. And I'm like, that's amazing because I'm the same. And
Mm,
I was still a virgin. Like I had held on to my purity. And then I was 43 when I got married. So that's a long time to stand stand firm on that.
Mm.
But
There's not many people out there who can
yeah,
who have stood firm on that purity. I think
yes.
it's one of the first things in our society in the West that has kind of been thrown out the door.
But I will admit
So
now I can see in
good on you.
retrospect that, yes, that was a great thing, but there was also a level of pride in me attached to that.
Yeah. Okay.
And also like this expectation and entitlement that came with that, oh, because I did that, then God owes me a good marriage kind of thing.
Mm.
And that it's all going to be wonderful now because I did this kind of. So I kind of prescribed onto God how he should be blessing me.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn throughout this whole experience is
Yeah.
that God is God. And he, just like with Job,
That's right.
you know, how he questioned him and God's like, hey, I'm God. So I'm going to do what I do. You just don't try and work me out. And I think I've spent my whole life trying to work out God because I wanted to control him.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to control how he blessed me.
Yeah. Yeah. How arrogant of us humans, isn't it?
Sin of pride. It's just as
Yeah.
bad as others. And so, yeah. And so, anyway, I went into this marriage. We had a beautiful wedding. It was stunning. And
Where was the wedding?
it was at the Avoca Beach Picture Theatre, which is kind of ironic.
So he came here.
Yes, he came here. We were only really courting, dating, and being engaged for like 1 year since we met, and a lot of that was long distance. He was coming and going, and
Yeah.
and so we got married there, and then went to Ubud in Bali for our honeymoon, and then I got back from the honeymoon. And so yeah, at the honeymoon, obviously, so just to be a little bit extra personal here, obviously I hadn't had sex ever in my life, and I was busting to just, like,
Yeah.
and he wasn't that interested. It seemed really weird to me. Like we had maybe sex twice or three times over a 2-week period,
and for someone who said they were also a virgin, or that they
no. He definitely, he had been married before, so he had told me at that point. He told me that he'd been married once before me, and I believed that for the 5.5 years that we were married, and then right when everything blew up, I found out that was a lie. He had been married twice before me.
Oh wow, yeah.
So he'd lied about that, and then I found out everything. Like he'd lied about so many things. So one of the things that he lied about throughout our marriage, and it sort of started in our honeymoon, was that so after 2 years of being married, we weren't having sex at all, and he lied to me and told me that he couldn't get erections anymore. He was 11 years older than me, and he was trying to teach me about men because I was so naive. I literally knew nothing. I didn't have brothers, and I didn't really have conversations with any of my male friends about this stuff in Christian circles. You really don't. And so I didn't really know. Yeah. And I mean, all of my like self-help books had always been about, the girl, you've got to give them sex even if you don't feel like it because men need it. And that was kind of the headspace I was going into. And then I got shocked when he was rejecting me, and especially on our honeymoon and I actually went into my room and cried because I was like, I wasn't even that I wanted sex. I wanted intimacy.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that actually I never once got intimacy with him ever. It was only ever sex, and it was only ever on his terms, and it was very, very infrequent. And then later on I found out why. So just to rewind, I'm sorry it's all a little bit choppy because the details come in, or
that's okay.
But so we'll
for those who don't understand intimacy, it's into me you see. So that's a really profound way that I found helped with me in understanding intimacy as well. I've come from a broken marriage, and I'm in an amazing marriage now, and finding an actual intimacy, someone who actually is completely into knowing you and your loves, your things, and that's the intimacy, and it's not just the sex, but it's about becoming that, like as God puts it in his Bible, like you become that one flesh, and so you're supposed to be that unit, and Yeah, sorry to hear that
Yeah, it
that you
was. He
kind of
was.
missed it.
I missed out, and he was a very, unbeknownst to me, he was a very, very broken, wounded man.
Mm.
But he presented so the opposite of that, full of confidence, and like he had it all together. He knew all the answers. But when we were dating, I didn't shy away from the difficult questions. I mean, I asked him about his flaws, and one time I actually sat down and said, "Look, I need to ask." I actually shared a poem that I had written because being 43 and single, um, I'd really felt quite like, where are the good men? And I can actually recite it. It's a really short poem,
Yeah.
and
Do you
it's
want to
called
recite it?
it's called Where Are the Men? And I, in a moment of vulnerability and intimacy, I thought emotional intimacy with my husband, I shared it with my fiance. I shared this poem, and it goes like this: Where are the men, the valiant and strong? Are they hiding behind rocks, behind work, behind porn?
Mm.
Where are the men? Come forth and fight. Offer us your glory, your strength, your might. For when you don't show, our futures feel bleak, and our hearts, untended, grow weary and seek to meet our needs by taking your place, forfeiting our glory, our feminine grace. So come for us, rescue us, push through the fear, lift up your swords and down your beer. Where are the men? There must be one who'll fight till the end, till the battle is won.
Yeah, wow.
And I shared that with him because, I mean, I'd read like John Eldridge's Wild at Heart and Captivating, and I was just like so into gender. I was just so ready because after years and years of I just wanted this so much. And I thought, you know what? This is the perfect time to bring up the topic of porn.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, look, I know a lot of men struggle with porn. I just want to know what you're like, what's it been like for you?
Mm.
And he was like, oh, yeah, I also know that a lot of men struggle with it, and I have my flaws, but that certainly is not one of them. In
Mm.
fact, I actually led a men's group that helped men in recovery of that back in the US. And I was like, oh, cool, And
Do you know what the name of that was? Was there an actual thing that he was kind of promoting?
oh, look, this was so long ago, and he didn't actually give the name of any group. And
Yeah.
later on, I found out it was complete BS. Like, it wasn't
Yeah,
true. But that was just something that like the lies that he actually formulated were
Mm.
overcorrections. They were like almost the complete opposite of what the truth really was, which I did not find out till a lot later. But he also, like, every time when we were engaged and married, for the whole duration of our marriage, every time a sex scene came on in a movie, even if it was very like soft, like it wasn't much, always fast forwarding it, covering my eyes and his eyes with pillows.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. He doesn't want to
Yeah,
see anybody.
he's like acting out what he said
Yeah.
he was like
Yeah. And so those
that he was.
actions backed up the words a little.
Yeah.
And I totally thought he was like, and he said, I have no tolerance for adultery. If you ever commit adultery, I will leave you, no questions asked. And I'm like, I'm never going to commit adultery. My father was always committing adultery. So I was so against it. And I was like, never, ever. And so I never thought he would or be into porn or anything. But as it ended up, he was heavily into doing those two things in secret in our marriage for a lot of the time. For the last 3 years of our marriage, he was watching porn twice a week. He shared. And then for the last 9 months of our marriage, he was having an affair. And this was when I was going through the worst part of the cancer.
Yeah, wow.
And he was also running our money into the ground, using it to pay for his lover to fly out to all the parts of the US that his work sent him to, because he was working in hospitality and going to different resorts and selling advertising for them. And so he would get to go to those places that his work would cover it. But he was using our money to pay for her to fly out, so that,
Wow.
and he pretended to her he was rich. He told her he was going to divorce me and marry her. He lied to her and told her that I was also having affairs, and that we had made an agreement that we were just roommates, and
So making it like a
just
open marriage kind of thing.
and also
Fast.
preyed on her because she also had cancer when he met her, using all of like the health tools I had taught him, and he was like
Yeah.
bringing. So, he was just like he was pretty much a predator.
Yeah, a bit of a manipulator.
A huge
Yeah.
manipulator and a pathological liar.
Mm.
And it was just, yeah. And then that's also when I found out about the affair. And the way I found out about the affair was so traumatic for me because I found a Dropbox folder full of photos and videos of them having sex on his computer. And
What he would like
they were filming
film his
themselves.
own like pornography.
Yeah, they made their own pornography, and I don't know if they distributed it. I don't think they did. I think it was just so they could watch it back themselves. It was gross.
Oh, that is weird.
It was just, just think about how like innocent my background
Yeah.
is, and the fact that I was also craving sex. I had been denied it, and I didn't even think, like if he can't perform, or so he says. I didn't ever like challenge him. Well, hang on a minute. What about my intimacy needs? You don't actually need to be able to physically perform to sort of meet my needs completely. Like we can be creative.
That's right.
But I just didn't. He really wore at my self-esteem and my self-confidence because the biggest thing that he would have against me was only superficial, and that he was angry at me that I wasn't what he called dolling up all the time.
Yeah.
And also like throughout my journey, my weight fluctuated. So I put on quite a bit of weight after the first lot of chemo because it threw me into early menopause, and also because life was hard.
Yeah.
And then during grad school, but then when I went through cancer, I got so skinny, like probably half my size now. And he hated both those extremes. But I really didn't have that much control over those things.
Yeah.
But he still blamed me, like, for not being attractive enough that he had to go and have affairs. So and go to porn because I wasn't.
Yeah. Really.
It was pretty.
Really spitting on the idea of through sickness and in health, right?
And for better or for worse.
Better for worse. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
it
tough.
was pretty awful considering he talked such a big talk and, was acting like the world's best Christian moral. He never ever swore. He never let me swear, which I don't swear and I don't like swearing. But in Australia, damn and hell are not swear words, really. And I would say them over there and he would silence me and tell me off. And so he was incredibly legalistic. He told friends of ours that we were trying to set up that they shouldn't stay under the same roof when they visit each other because of the temptation that they might sleep together. And at the same time, he was having this full-blown affair on the side. So he just presented this very legalistic
and he called himself a Christian at that stage as well.
And he still does.
Yeah.
He still does. And even when I wanted the divorce, he was challenging me on not being a forgiver. You're not a real Christian. You're not a forgiver. I'm like, read the Bible. What does it say about adultery? It's the one clause that is really clear about why you can actually have divorce.
Yeah.
Because there are, I like your story. I totally agree with your story that, the marriage was broken at that point.
Marriages.
Yeah. And there are so many, like if there's physical violence, there's so many reasons why I think people should get divorced. But the Bible and Jesus was so clear about divorce as far as when there's adultery.
Yeah, they were very clear on that part.
And he was still just picking and choosing what he wanted to manipulate me and saying what kind of Christian are you? You're not forgiving me. Well, forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. Forgiveness is unconditional. Trust has to be earned.
Yeah.
And he broke my trust so badly, and then given the opportunity to earn it back, he didn't. Because I actually did give him one chance after I found out. And then I found out he was still taking girls to the Virgin Islands, and he was still watching porn, and he was still chasing after he was still doing all the things he said he'd stop doing, and lying. That's the hardest thing. How do you trust someone who lies all the time about everything? Yeah.
Yeah. And for those out there who might be listening thinking, man, some of this stuff is ringing true. Like there is such a thing as spiritual violence, and manipulating the scriptures to get what you want. And so if anyone's doing that to you, please reach out.
Yeah.
There's plenty of refuges. Reach out to your local church. If it's a church that you're currently going to with the partner, maybe reach out even to another local church. even send up some email us as well. We're happy to get you in contact with people who will help as well. It's a horrible thing to know that people use the good words of the Bible to manipulate and destroy other people's lives for their own satisfaction.
And we wonder why so many people
Hate Christians.
Yeah. Like I was quite like at Florida State Uni, I was quite like annoyed how like they preach tolerance and all this, but then that seemed to stop when it came to Christians. And a lot of Christians were in the closet because it was too scary to come out because everybody would cancel them. But when I went to the university I taught at in East Texas, and I saw the hypocrisy, the legalism, and the way that those Christians use control. And I saw the thing that everybody at Florida State Uni had probably seen and hated about Christianity. And I was like, okay, God, you've given me a look into the other side. And thank you. But also it was really painful. But also I understand now,
Yeah.
because at the heart of it, anyone can use anything to control and manipulate.
Yeah.
And something like Christianity is an absolute fertile ground for that, especially for the treatment of women, because there's so much in the Bible about submission and therefore women in marriages who think that they should be submissive and that's what it means to be a good wife can end up putting up with so much abuse,
Yeah. It does put so a man is supposed to love his wife self-sacrificially, and I think that's where men miss that.
Yeah.
And they've got this amazing a biblical woman who is going to submit to them, and they're supposed to also submit to her as well.
Yeah.
But it's a willful submission, and you gotta look after that and foster that. It's as in your poem, like really hit home that men, you're supposed to be protecting and looking after your spouse and to the women in your lives, because the world is a crazy place, and you need to be a strong man to be able to do that. And I think that's where our society is kind of, and I think it might come also from the feminist movement as well, that a whole bunch of things that have brought this kind of idea of toxic masculinity. And of course, men have abused their power in the past as well.
Yeah.
Where we kind of swing the pendulum so far that men are no longer men. Like the men who came out of, like, let's say World War II were men who would fight for their country, for their home, and protect the people that they love. Yeah. And I think that's lost, especially in our societies today. Everything's kind of run by money and power and things like that, or just self gain.
Yeah.
And I think that's where is a big problem. And pornography.
Yeah, just to talk into that a little. I'm not sure if the viewers have ever read John Eldridge's Wild at Heart. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
I highly recommend it. And there's a companion book called Captivating that him and his wife wrote together. Both of those look at like how God intended us as men and women to display his glory. And in Wild at Heart, he kind of breaks it down that a man's glory is his strength, but strength is meant to be offered. It's not meant to be used to abuse or withheld. And both those two extremes are what sort of seems to be happening. Either men are abusing it through violence and control and dominance, or they're withholding, like Adam did when Eve was taking the apple. He just stood by her and did nothing and did not stand up as the man he should have been.
100%. And I think that's where a lot of people miss in that story.
Yeah.
That he abdicated his responsibility to lead his family. He was there, and he did not move into his space of leadership and just let things happen. He did not take the responsibility of leading his family seriously.
That's right.
He abdicated his responsibility.
Absolutely. And what this book talks about is that a man's strength is meant to be offered. It's meant to be. It's and also what strength actually is. So a man crying, in my opinion, is strength, not weakness. It's actually the courage to face and release the emotions that God has given all of us in the tear ducts. He's given men just as many as women. So why do we hold back? That's actually, I feel, when men don't cry, they're not in touch with their feelings. Like my ex-husband used to start crying and then he would just so adamantly like just want to close it off, and it was almost like he was actually very scared, which is cowardice, to go to those places. It's not strength, and so strength that's offered is actually self-sacrificial. And then, not just to diss men, because women, we also have like our glory. That's what I talk about in the poem. Our glory is our beauty, but that's not looking at, obviously it's a tough, a touchy spot for me. It's not just looking at external beauty. It's the beauty of our grace and nurturing nature also needs to be offered, not used as manipulation, like beauty to seduce, or withheld, or like we become like needy and all those things. So those two extremes also. But like, I don't consider myself a feminist. I consider myself a femininist. If that makes sense, because I actually think that feminism kills femininity.
Yeah.
And
Kind of makes it more masculine, doesn't it?
yeah, like
That's
it's
kind of
almost
the
like you
push
have
at
to
the
be
moment.
a
Yeah.
masculine, and that's not what I think. We need to be the most feminine we can be and strong in our femininity, not abdicate that in order to be like men. And the same for men. Like, men need to be more masculine, not abdicate that to be more feminine, so that they kind of become this wishy-washy version of themselves. But I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me.
No,
That's not going to sit
that's
well with a lot
okay.
of people.
That's
But
okay. We push the boundaries on this channel.
yeah.
We're happy to push the boundaries. Yeah, especially when it comes to the way the Bible intended men and women to act towards each other.
Yes, I think people misunderstand equality. Like, equality is the equality of our value, where men and women have the same value
Yeah.
to God, to life, but we are different.
We are
Like,
built
you just have
different.
to look at us to see how we are different.
Mm.
Difference doesn't make one lesser than the other. We need to like glory in our differences rather than try and deny them and switch over to the other side and take on their attributes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think something that we miss in our society is that we don't glorify like motherhood anymore, or at all. Like, we get one day in the year called Mother's Day, but really, like, we need to be showing women like there's so much strength in being a mother and taking care of the family. Like, families are looked after and held together by the mother. And I think that we've lost this power that these women the kind of had. And a lot of people think like, oh, if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're actually this person who will have to stay at home as like a in a prison kind of thing. That's completely the opposite. Like, they've got the freedom to go out with their children and actually enjoy the world and teach them.
And
That, like,
that's also, I think, we have to value people's wants as well. Like, I never got to be a mum. I wanted to be, but it wasn't like a driving thing that I saw in my friends. Like, I was like, if I could take it or leave it, because I was really focused on wanting to use my giftings and my calling in life, and got a lot of satisfaction from that. So I just think that we shouldn't like prescribe that being a woman is just this or this or this, or isn't this or this. I think it's just being everything you're called to be, without restriction, and not hating your excuse me, not sort of despising the gender that you've been put in,
yeah.
because it's not the same as something else, yeah.
Well, let's kind of get back to your story.
Yeah.
I think that was some
A little bit of a sidetrack.
amazing wisdom there. That, yeah, we've gone through Job's story. We've gone through men and women and their differences, and we haven't really touched on, I guess, your reliance. Like, how did you came out the other side of this man who abused your love.
Yeah.
and your willingness to go over to a different country and marry him, and to start a life with him, to only find out that he's used lies and manipulation to kind of
Yeah.
send you down into this rabbit hole that's got you kind of bottled up and not the person you kind of envisioned. And
The exact opposite. It's like someone taking what I thought he was and flipped him inside out. And then I realized that he actually was acting. He was putting on a persona. He was a mask. He was walking around in a mask all the time, which is why I think he needed to get away, because he was always away for work. And I think that was the only way he was able to get reprieve and get built up enough to come back and keep on acting, which is ironic that I'm a director and drama teacher and I was living with the world's best actor for like 5.5 years and didn't know it, but it was partly because I was so vulnerable and subconsciously probably just in denial. And also I probably, there were lots of reasons why I kind of accepted everything that came. It was there was a lot of deception there. So, and he didn't just deceive me, he deceived everybody in my world, our Christian couples counselor and my pastors, my friends who are very discerning and intuitive, my family, everybody. So that made me feel a bit better that it wasn't just me, but I was also in a vulnerable place, having cancer and kind of wishing that I wanted a rescue. I wanted to be rescued. And so I think that also played into it. But so you were saying, like, because obviously this is a podcast about hope, and the story doesn't end just with the devastation.
That's right.
You know, and so
and you've come here and you've told us how kind of things have improved. So
yeah,
we'd love to hear about that improvement.
Yeah. Well, I think I wanted just to share a few times where throughout this, like, because I will admit, I was very angry at God, and I was not blaming him in the way, like, I wasn't cursing him, kind of like Job didn't curse God, but I was angry. I was like, God, and part of it was pride, but I was like, God, I stayed a virgin. I did what your word said, and this is the thanks I get, kind of thing. And I get put in this awful position. And I've been and that goes back to, I guess, the two trees in the garden, you know, like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Like, we eat of that tree, which is not the tree we're meant to eat of. And even if we might not eat of the trees of pornography and like the bad leaves that maybe my ex, and lying and cheating, and that my ex-husband was eating off, I was eating off the good leaves, in that there was pride and there was self-righteousness and there was judgment and criticism and entitlement. And so those things were at play in me, that I think God was using this situation, not that he put me in it for that reason, but he used this situation to help bring those to my awareness and help me to start to deal with those things. So there was definitely purpose, or like God says he will turn all things around for good for those who love him and according to his purposes. So even though he didn't plan it necessarily, I don't know if he did or not, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that he used it for my betterment. And the character in me has definitely grown as a result of all that suffering. And that's what I think it's in James. It says that suffering will produce perseverance and character and all those things.
Yeah.
And that's definitely happened. And I could see both the story of Joseph and Job at play in my life. Like with Joseph, at the end of, like, in Genesis 50 verse 20, he says to his brothers, you intended this for harm, but God intended it for the saving of many lives. And even if, like, I can be an encouragement to people who are going through suffering and asking the questions why and where is God in this, that we can't prescribe to God how he's going to rescue us, help us, restore, bless. We have to trust when we can't see. We have to trust when everything is going to hell around us, and hold on to our faith even when it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, can I add to that?
Yeah.
God wants to hear that he wants to have that dialogue with you. He wants you to be.
Yeah.
You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be angry at the situation. You're allowed to be angry that God's put you in that situation.
Yeah.
He wants to hear you. He wants to hear who you are, and that you come at him as a child of God. You come at him like a child, that you are coming to your father, and that you are going to. You need to give it to your father sometimes. Like, if you're not happy with the situation, you need to let him know.
Yeah.
But you also need to humble yourself and to know that he will use everything for good, but he knows way more than us.
Yeah.
But don't think that, you being angry at God is a bad thing. Anger is like, even God gets angry sometimes, and anger is a great motivator. Anger is a great motivator to do things. And you've got to channel that anger into something good.
Yeah.
And so use that anger to open up the word. Go to people who can help guide you through life. Get a mentor, anything like that. Anger is an emotion of action.
Yeah.
And so it can get you moving.
Yeah.
And God, if you channel that right, God can get you moving in the right direction.
Yeah, because the Bible doesn't say don't be angry. It just says don't sin in your anger.
Yeah.
And it's when we use anger as an excuse to like get violent or whatever, say awful things to people. That's when that's the sin. But the actual feeling of anger, I actually so agree with you. I think it's something that is, especially with women, it's kind of frowned upon. Like I was defaulting to crying when I was actually angry, because I had been conditioned to think that it's unsafe for me to be angry, because then I would get lashed out even more at that. So I wasn't even in touch.
Lashed out to you?
Yeah,
or?
like if I expressed anger growing up, I was
would get disciplined kind of thing.
I felt unsafe to do so.
Yeah.
And so I learned to internalize it, and I actually think that was also part of like maybe the cancer, like tumors forming in my body, because the body keeps score. The body knows what the mind does not know, like the whole time. I feel like, because we're tripart beings, body, soul, spirit, right? And I felt like my spirit knew the deception I was under, and it was communicating to my body and getting my body to symptomize, so that eventually, because I didn't actually, all the treatments I was trying to get with cancer did not actually work until after all of Mark's deception was exposed. And then all of a sudden things started, like healing started to come. Wow. And I definitely felt like there was a connection between those things.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, like there is a book called The Body Keeps Score, and it does talk about how our sometimes physical symptoms are a reflection of something else going on that we're not always fully aware of, or even aware of at all. Because I was living under this massive deception. There was pornography, hardcore pornography under my roof for like 2 years, and then this huge affair and then my ex-husband was acting like everything was great except for the fact that we weren't having sex, but everything else, like he was affectionate, we'd sit and watch movies together. And it wasn't until like he slowly started to pull away and become more sarcastic and more wouldn't laugh at my jokes, and he was just really getting mean. He was getting more and more mean over time. And then I woke up. But I do want to share that this beautiful moment when it was like at the absolute deepest, like the worst of it. I was having chemotherapy over in the US, still going to uni, still getting a lot of attack at uni. And I just find out about the divorce, and it's during COVID. And my mum, who
found out that he was going to divorce you. He was having the
affair by finding that Dropbox. Like, it was just the most intense way to find out. And also, like, my mum wasn't able to come out to look after me because of the lockdowns, and there was just so much, and I had no support really. I had a little bit of support from church and friends over there, but you have only just met these people. They're not like people that have known you your whole life that you can really trust. And I was crying one night.
And also, that's the same place your ex-husband was going to. So that's...
Oh no, well, he actually left Tallahassee altogether and moved to town. I actually didn't let him back in the house. I didn't let him I was like, that's it. You and so he left Tallahassee. He actually went down to Tampa to pursue this woman who actually had broken up with him.
So I guess your church then did fully support you and you alone kind of thing?
They supported me fairly well, I will say. I feel like emotionally they probably could have done a better job at supporting me. I did get prayer support, which was great. And actually on the day that I confronted Mark, my pastor and one of the elders from my church came and sat in the car down the road just in case. And then one of my friends from church was inside the house because I wouldn't let Mark in, and they were all praying for me while I was confronting him. And then like about a year later, my pastor, this is Florida, mind you, my pastor confessed to me that he'd taken his gun with him.
Yeah, wow.
Because I mean, I was petrified, honestly, because I was like, this man I trusted, and now he's not this man.
Yeah.
To what extent is he not this man? Like how?
Yeah.
Like he could be a murderer for all I knew. Like he'd lied to me about so much. How was I supposed to know he's not going to come in the house and try and kill me? Like I was so scared, you know. But in one of these like late nights while I was in bed alone in this house crying, I just felt God whisper into my ear, and he said, "You're experiencing the fellowship of my suffering." And it was such a painful, deep moment, but it was also so incredibly comforting in a weird way at the same time.
I had a similar thing when I was going through my thing. My mentor said to me is like, God is suffering with you. And it's not, and it just kind of hit me that I wasn't doing this alone. Like he grieves with you through this process. He doesn't like what's going on. He doesn't like that this suffering happens. He doesn't like that this world is broken. And he suffered. He went. That's why he went to the cross for us.
And I'll take that one step further, because the next thing he showed me wasn't that so much that he was just grieving with me, but that he was carrying me through. Because do you know the Footprints poem?
Yes. I really want to rewrite that poem.
Well, so do I with my version, because what God said to me is like, you're looking down and seeing one set of footprints, but you're not looking at sand, you're looking at lava.
Yeah, okay.
He was showing me that he wasn't just taking me through like the sandy, difficult times. He was taking me through like a volcanic time. And the reason I wasn't feeling like he was there, A, there was only one set of footprints, but B, it's because even if you're on someone's back and that you're in the volcano, you're still going to feel the spits and spats of all of that. You're going to feel that heat, but it was his feet that was going in and bearing all of that and took me through it, because the one time I felt like he might have just to show me what it was like without him, where he might have stepped aside, the excruciating agony of the pain without him not by my side, carrying me, was unbearable. And I just know the only way I got through it, the only way, was because he was there carrying me through it.
Yeah, my one kind of goes a little bit more like, I look back and I see a line in the sand and two footprints, because he dragged me through it. That, you know, he's still taking you there, but he's gonna let you drag for a little bit sometimes, and that's when we're gonna hit those rocks in the sand. It's when we're gonna hit those shells that might cut us up a bit, but he's still gonna get you there in the end. And life, it just with you, like the Footprints poem as a whole just kind of does not capture the suffering that a human might feel through that. Yeah, God carried you through it, but it kind of feels a bit wishy-washy to me, and it's like you're not really capturing the actual suffering we might actually hit in life. And I like that version too of the being in the lava, and that, you know, the extreme heat around you. Yeah.
Well, I think it's because instinctively when we're going through that and we're not coming out of it in the way or in the time that we think we should, we think that we have been abandoned by God, and we think that he's not there, he's not working behind the scenes, he's just left us in the pit of hell to just deal with it. That's how I felt, like on a soul level. I felt like I've been left here, I've been dragged to this country, dropped here, and now I'm just in completely unprotected and alone and at like the mercy of all this assault coming at me from all different directions.
Mm.
But hey, I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm doing okay. And so he did not forsake me. He did not, he
Yeah.
says he will never leave us or forsake us. That is the truth. We have to stand on the truth, not on what we see and feel in any given moment.
Mm.
And he didn't leave me or forsake me. But I so felt like he was at that time, in those times.
Yeah. I find some people have two different experiences. They either find the point where they really need to lean into it,
Mm,
and they find they feel like a spiritual comfort and whatnot. Whereas for me, I felt like he was far away,
mm,
but all I could see in my world was his actions.
mm.
That every time, like he kept reminding me that he was there the whole time, even though I couldn't feel him. So it was more like I was blinded.
Yeah,
And
I relate. I actually have
mm,
one example I can share about that. So when I ended up having to go to the Moffitt Cancer Center, which gave me the big treatment that actually saved my life,
mm,
there was so much around that. I'd already separated from Mark, so obviously he wasn't going to come with me and be my support. The team at the hospital said I had to have a caregiver with me there. I was going to be in hospital for between 8 days and 3 weeks, and then I had to be down in Tampa, close to the hospital for 3 weeks, and I was not allowed to be alone because of the side effects. I could fall, all kinds of things. But my mum couldn't come out, even though at this stage they'd opened the borders, but she'd been to Iran, and so the US would not accept her visa to come to the US.
mm,
And um, other family members I'd asked for just said no. And then, so there was this girl that Mark had actually introduced me to that lived in Tampa, and I had become friends with her, and she was going to have me stay with her, and she was going to be my so-called caregiver.
mm,
But in the lead up to it, when I was staying with her, she just was very unsupportive and was nervous about chemo shedding in her house and weird things like that. And we ended up having a fight, and I didn't feel welcome in her house. And so I was literally stranded with
mm,
no caregiver, no accommodation for when I got out of the hospital. And I had just had 3 days of back to back intense chemo in the lead up to this big treatment. I had the worst splitting headache. I was so sick. And I'm driving around Tampa not knowing where I'm going to be. And I arrive at this hotel, and I'm at the end of myself, like physically. And I go to the counter, and I'm just holding it together enough to say, "Can I get a room?" The lady across the counter looks at me, and she's like, "Are you okay, love?" And I thought I was
mm,
holding it together. And I just started crying. She came around the counter. She gave me the biggest mama bear hug. And then she said, "Can I pray with you?"
yeah.
And she prayed with me. And I just fell into her arms and started crying as though she was just like an angel given to me from God in that moment, to just say, hey, friends might betray you, leave you, family members can't come reach you, ex-husbands do what they do and leave you, and you are not alone. There's always going to be my people somewhere. I'm always going to use something to comfort you, to show you that you can do this. We can get there. And then she actually came and visited me in the hospital, brought me gifts, and she was just, and it was just like, that was just a miracle. That was just a God way of saying to me, Rouba, told you, you're not alone. I haven't forsaken you. It just doesn't come in the way we think it should. We
Mm,
can't control or prescribe it.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you still have contact with this woman?
Actually, no, we kind of lost contact. But not for any bad reason. It just kind of, she moved states, and it just kind of, but it
So
was like God used her for the season that he wanted to use
you
her
never
in.
know. She could have been an angel.
Exactly.
That's so
Exactly.
cool.
She so could have been. That's the
Could have
kind
been
of,
an angel
yeah,
right there.
yeah.
If for those who don't know, like there's a Bible verse that talks about like you opening up the door to people, and you not like dismissing people, because if you could be
Entertaining an angel.
entertaining an angel,
Yeah.
like that's so cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so God is throwing you this love, and
It was just enough to keep me going when I was literally falling apart. Like it was an intense period of everything being stripped away from me. But in the moments where I absolutely would like dissolve in a mess if I didn't have some physical comfort, he did provide it.
Yeah. And so what was the timeline between you kind of going through this this divorce, this separation, and then moving back to Australia? Like what there was a time there while you're still finishing your treatments and your thesis, did you say?
Yeah. So my thesis, it was directing a play. So that, and I also had to present a folder this thick of stuff. But yeah, it was full on. But so 20 March, April of 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, was when I was. Yeah. Was when sorry, wait, let me go back. I found out about Mark's affair and everything blew up in October of 2021.
Yep.
March, April of 2022 was when I had the treatment.
Yep.
Threw me into remission. And then I had 1 year alone of grad school, my final year when I had to do my thesis. And then an extra year when I went to Texas to take on this job as the assistant professor of theatre arts at this Baptist university. And then I had about 4 months in the US traveling with no home, kind of had to take my ex-husband to court because he stopped paying his alimony. It was awful, but that had to happen in that time. And then I came out here. So it's now been almost 3 years since the divorce and about 3.5 years since the separation.
It sounds like you'd have that's a strong character to stick around instead of cutting and running and coming, let's say, back to Australia, back to home, back to family, and kind of persist through the thesis, through the jobs, and like living that life that you've kind of set up in the US.
Well, I kind of had my hands tied a little because the separation happened during COVID and all of Australia's borders were closed. I think had they not been, I might have been tempted to come home and get the comfort straight away, but it kind of forced me to stay. And then when they were open, by then it was a bit better. And I thought, you know what, I've only got 1 more year. I can get this degree because that degree would open up doors for me to get, better work over there if I wanted to stay there. But I think I want to stay here because I like the lifestyle better here. But there's more work opportunities there. So I am still in a little bit of a flux state where I'm not really sure where I'm going to end up long term. But I'm living in the moment, trusting God to open and letting go of trying to control everything. Because I think one of my big weaknesses over the years has been being a bit of a control freak, which is not a good thing at all because it doesn't allow room for trusting God or others. Yeah.
We can't control God. Now, before we started the show, you talked about God being a restorer.
Yeah.
So how through that, when did you see that restoration? So obviously that angel, I'm just going to refer to her as an angel, helped you through that treatment. But like you still were picking up the pieces of your life after that. And what kind of restored you to you to come back to being?
That's a great question. Wasn't sort of like one thing. It was a lot of things.
Yeah.
My faith stayed intact, actually grew deeper and stronger and more realistic. I think I kind of moved away from the name it and claim it kind of thing that seems to be prevalent in my Pentecostal church upbringing into more of a actually embracing of suffering theology, whereas I think I'd come from this sense of like, I don't need to suffer because Jesus suffered, but he says, pick up your cross and follow me. Like we have to actually be imitators of Christ. And so so I think my theology shifted a lot and I'm more of a realist and less of an idealist. So I think also seeing the fruit of what I went through actually gives you the courage to keep taking steps forward and makes you stronger. And, but there was like God would put people in my path to encourage me, to support me. even though they weren't always there for the long haul, like I had some friends in Florida who really helped me through the tough times, and then they ended up kind of, for reasons completely outside of my control, turning on me right before I left. Sometimes I really realized that like there are seasons where God will use people for seasons, and they're not always going to always be there, and people are fallible and make mistakes and all that kind of thing. And I certainly have made my share of mistakes too that have hurt people. But it's just seeing my health restored, my energy restored, gave me that boost as well, because after being so sick and in pain for so long with the cancer,
Yeah.
it was lovely to have some energy come back and doing so well. Like I got straight A's throughout uni, like I call it a 4.0 GPA. Like I maintained that, and really proud of the work that I did, the directing work that I did, really, and the writing work, and just those things just kind of help restore you. But mostly my relationship with God and time in worship and prayer and staying in church and yeah, I can't pinpoint one thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's awesome. And so you've moved back to Australia, you said 7 months ago, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 months ago.
Yeah.
And so how's that been, kind of settling back in here, settling back into an Australian church and things like that? Like, have you found a church
Yeah.
home? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm currently going to, it's called Faith, Hope, Love Church, and it's just a small church. It's just been going for a little over a year, and it's in Foresters Beach. And it actually, funny story, so the pastor's wife, one of the pastors, is Jilly Flaxman, and she used to be Jilly Oldfield, and she used to be one of my ex-students.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there are a few ex-students from when I taught at Gossip Christian School, which is now St. Philip's, who actually go to that school, to that church, and I see them every week. And it's kind of cool that, like, yeah, it's just nice. Yeah.
I mean, that's how we ended up having this connection. Is my wife was taught by you.
I never taught her, but she was a student
She
at
was a
the
student
school
at
when
the
I was,
school.
that was when I was at Y on Christian. Yeah.
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 It's such an amazing story you've got here, that you've gone through such adversity, and it's not always the physical adversity that everyone kind of thinks that suffering is going to come at, especially in our comfortable Western world, that the devil is wily, and he uses all sorts of things to attack us. And you've come out the other side, and you've said that your faith is stronger. Um, yeah, and that God has restored you um, like your faith is stronger. You're moving in what I suspect is a good direction, because you're here with us, and you're not giving us this persona of someone who has been, I guess, who's in the lava anymore.
Oh, no. It's been so nice having a season of peace and being able to get out of survival mode. I was heavily, like I said, I was relying on caffeinated drinks to get me through. The year I spent in East Texas, at the Baptist University there, was really, really hard. And I was really overworked, and I was like a shell of my real self. I was literally just living off Celsius caffeinated drinks and zero sleep and just running around trying. And then it was a really, really tough time. So coming here, the sheer contrast of being in a very ugly part of the world with like nothing really pretty around you and very landlocked, to being here with the beaches and the great weather and the sound of the birds and the
Recently we
laid
had a
back
lot of rain
people.
recently.
Yeah, the rain's been full on, but like, and people here, I just love how laid back and real everybody is, and you can be honest and real with them without them kind of freaking out that you're. I don't know. I couldn't get the people in Texas. I couldn't find an in with them. They were weird to me, and I think I was weird to them. And so
I think a
yeah.
lot of people look at Aussies and think we're weird. I don't think it's just the US. But we also look at the US and think they're a bit weird.
But as someone who's traveled so much and lived in 6 countries, and I can speak 3 languages, and it's just I kind of I always found that I was very good at fitting in. I could always find a way to find common ground. And so it just was like this. It baffled my brain how I couldn't work this place out. And when I went to church there, I went to 3 different Bible studies. I couldn't find one that I actually felt like I actually connected to. And maybe it was just a very weird place. And I won't put all of Texas in the same basket because my cousins live in Austin, and it's a lovely area there. But this place was weird. I'll just put it at that. It's just a weird place.
So before we start getting into the wrap up, what would you like to pass on to those listening? Like, what would be like your bits of advice, your kind of your closing thoughts on this whole story, and that God has given you hope right through this whole thing, that he was the only one that kind of brought you through it?
I think I like to just bring up 2 parables? Yeah, 2 parables in the Bible that I think speak into this. Is one of them is the parable of the sower, and only one part of it when the seed is thrown on the shallow soil, and the crop grows quickly and it's great, full of joy, whatever. And then the hardship comes, the sun, the heat, and they just dry up because they don't have deep roots. So just shelve that for a second. The other one is the parable about building the house on the rock, not on the sand.
Solid foundation.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of the times hardship destroys Christians because they haven't got their roots deep in their relationship with God. They've gone more out into the peripherals. They haven't gone deep. And going deep means we deal with our stuff. We address the deep wounds. We look at our family of origin and how that's affected how we think about things, our relationships. We don't run away from pain. We deal with our own shadow selves, the ugly sides of who we are, without shame and blame and guilt, but with the fact that, like, looking at it, the fact that we are all flawed. No matter where we're from, no one is better than anybody else. We all need a savior. We all need the blood of Jesus to cleanse us and set us free. And just to be humble and to be teachable. I think, and that's how we get our roots deep, because I think in both those cases, it's the good soil and the rock that actually, when the hardship comes, sustains us and makes,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any comments, please send them through. I'll pass them on to Rouba if you have any words of affirmation or any questions for her, and I'm sure we can get you some answers. What we do want to do is that we have a little bit of a thing on the show that whenever we have a guest, we actually give you a little gift. And this is a bit of a holdover from our previous channel. We rebranded, but that might be worth a lot of money one day. But thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
So much for having me. It's been such a pleasure and an honor.
Oh, we hope to have you on again one day and hear about all the amazing things God is doing in your life.
Amen.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you have any questions, if you have anything, also, if you're going through a situation that might be similar, please reach out. There's help, and we're happy to help. We're happy to put you into get you in contact with people who will help as well and who are better equipped. And we're happy to pray for you. And so make sure you hit us up, and don't be shy. Don't hide in the shadows. God wants you all there in His family, and we'll keep bringing you these stories of hope. And yeah, before we leave, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with all your friends, and make sure you pass on this amazing story, because it was wonderful to hear. And everyone say goodbye. All right. Have a good night, everyone.